Revelation 8, we covered 13 verses last Tuesday night. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And again, I might be the only guy on the planet that sees the first seven seals. It's one of the three sevens, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 vials. But I see them as different. I see them as previews of coming attraction. Each time a seal is loosed, John sees something. The first 4 seals, he's seen the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse. That's it. He sees those guys. And then with the 5th seal, he sees those under the altar. And then he sees an earthquake with the 6th seal. And then he sees, well, we'll get to that. We're going to get into the trumpets right now. But the first 4 trumpets we covered a week ago on Tuesday. And in those first 4 trumpets, they all seem to affect 1/3 of something. So when in verse 7, under the review, in verse 7, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the 3rd part of the trees was burnt up, and all the grass was burned up. So it affected 1/3. And I'm assuming that when it affected a 3rd part of the trees, that it also affected all the grass in that 3rd part. That's my particular take on it. So when he sounded, a 3rd part of the trees were burnt up, and in that area of that 3rd part of the trees, the green grass was burned up. That's my take. In verse 8, and the 2nd angel sounded, and it's like a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. We can call that a meteorite. You can call it anything you want to guess. The bottom line is, what was the result of it? The 3rd part of the sea became blood. So first a 3rd part of the trees and the grass was burned up, and now a 3rd part of the sea became blood. And a 3rd part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the 3rd part of the ships were destroyed. So with these, I'm guessing seas and oceans is what is meant here. And a 3rd part of all that was affected when the 2nd angel sounded. Verse 10, and the 3rd angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the 3rd part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. Now, not only the big seas, the seas and oceans affected, but now the rivers and lakes and whatever are affected, a 3rd part of them. And the name of the star is called wormwood, and the 3rd part of the waters became wormwood. So the first 2 trumpet judgments greatly decrease the supply of food, actually. Seafood, vegetation. The 3rd one, as I mentioned, would have, the 3rd part actually, the 3rd angel would have impacted a lot of fish and so forth. Verse 12, the 4th angel sounded, and the 3rd part of the sun was smitten, and the 3rd part of the moon, and the 3rd part of the stars, so as the 3rd part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a 3rd part of it, and the night likewise. So I take that to mean that God affected humanity by shutting out the lights 8 hours a day. And I'm guessing 4 of that would have been nighttime, or it became completely dark. And 4 times would have been what was normally daytime, and it would have become completely dark. Now, if you've got a lot of bad stuff going on, and God turns the lights on you for 8 hours a day, turns the lights off on you for 8 hours a day, it's going to freak a lot of people out. It's going to freak them out. All right. Fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten. We already covered that. So, and I beheld, in verse 13, and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. So, after horrible, horrible event. Now you can see, when you compare these first four trumpets to the first four seals, they were just introducing characters. They were introducing the Antichrist and his partners that will create through war, famine, and so forth. Here, we're talking about, in each of these first four trumpets, a third of something is destroyed. You think that's bad, wait till you get to the bowls, or the vials, whichever you prefer to call them. All right, so we're on to this evening's lesson. We're now going to be in Revelation 9, verses 1 to 12. This is a holiday you might not want to look forward to. Death takes a holiday. You say, well, that sounds wonderful. No one's going to die for 5 months. Sounds great. Well, we'll see. Revelation 9, verse 1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven onto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So what or who is this star that fell from heaven? Notice the following passage. When Jesus was walking this planet, he said to his disciples in Luke 10:18, when they came back, he had sent his disciples out 2 by 2, and they were healing the sick and casting out devils, and they came back so excited. They said, man, people were getting healed, devils were getting out. And Jesus looked at them and said, I saw Satan fall from heaven as lightning. And so that's the verse here. So is that what's happening in the fifth trumpet? The star is often referred to angels in the Scripture. Was the star that fell Satan? At some point, and I believe it to be around the middle of the tribulation period, which is when I believe the trumpet and the vials are poured out. So it appears to me from Scripture that what Jesus was talking about when he said he saw Satan fall from heaven as lightning, when he was initially kicked out of heaven because he rebelled against God, he still had access to go back to heaven and accuse the brethren. You see that in Romans 8. But there comes a time when he no longer has access to heaven at all. And I believe that's in the middle of the tribulation period. And I believe that's probably what it's talking about here. So it said in verse 1, the fifth angel sounded, I saw a star fall from heaven onto the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. So, well, before I go, let me cut ahead before I comment much more. We're in Revelation 9. Let me jump ahead to Revelation 12, verses 7, 8, and 9. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon, that being Satan, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world, he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So it appears to me that this star that fell from heaven is talking about none other than Satan. When he was seen the door for the final time, he would never again appear in heaven. Now again, if you read the book of Job, he had access to heaven even after he rebelled. When the angels appeared before God, Satan and his angels appeared with them. So, He's had access. All this time, he enjoys going up to heaven and accusing you to the Father. That's what he did with Job. God bragged in Job, "Have you observed my servant Job?" And Satan said, "Sure, he's good. It's because you're protecting him. Let me at him and he'll curse you to your face." It's one of the strangest stories in all the Bible. God stepped back and said, "Have at him, but you can't kill him." And Job never wavered in his faith toward God. The things that man suffered in this test that Satan threw at him was incredible. But in all that, he said, "In my flesh, I will see God." Remember, Job had no Bible. Job was the first book of the Bible written. He didn't have a single scripture anywhere to encourage him. Nothing. And after all the things that befell him, he refused to curse God. His friends told him, "Curse God." No, that was his wife who told him. She said, "Curse God and die." And he refused to do it with all that had happened to him. And with no scripture, he had a revelation from God. He said, "In my flesh, I will see God." It's an amazing, amazing story. So Satan has gotten after you and I. Romans 8 said he accuses us to God. But God responds, "Who's going to accuse? You think I'm going to listen to you? It's my son that died for their sins." He gets nowhere accusing me to God. Nowhere. So the sneaky little rascal does something worse. He accuses me to me. And he accuses me to those around me to stir up trouble. God's not listening, but sometimes when he accuses me to me, I listen. Sometimes when he accuses Daryl to me, I might listen. God will never pay attention to Satan accusing any one of his children, because he knows the blood has covered all of it. Thank God. So I personally believe this angel that fell is Satan himself, and he was given the keys of the bottomless pit. Now, it appears to me when Jesus was dead 3 days, he took the keys of the bottomless pit from the devil. But it appears here he's given those keys back. Now, what's Satan going to do with the keys to hell? God's people have a seal on their forehead. He can't touch them. He is the devil. He's never loyal to his crew. If he can't touch the Christians, he's going to touch some of his own folks. And he's going to torment, because that's who he is. So, in my mind, it is probably Satan that's being talked about. Put that over and look at verse 2. By the way, I got a note at the top of page 20. Other ideas include it might be a good angel or Jesus himself. The thinking there is that this is a judgment from God, and therefore God is doing these things, not Satan. And that's certainly possible. Everything bad happening on the planet, this is judgment of God. But I personally believe it's the devil. Doesn't matter. Bad things are happening either way. So this angel that fell, either Jesus or Satan, verse 2, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. Unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, the 2/3 that's still good. They should not hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in the forehead. Remember, he sealed 144,000 Jews, 12,000 from each tribe, so these judgments of God would not harm those 144,000. And the way I understand it, every one of their converts, every one that these 144 Jewish evangelists was able to convert in the first 3.5 years, received the seal of God on their forehead as well. In other words, they too were protected by God. So, Satan, there's something happening here, and it said they can't hurt any of that anymore. All those who were sealed by God, who were not sealed by God, were affected by this judgment. So this judgment that we're talking about here, the fifth judgment, all of them are the fifth trumpet. Everybody on the planet Earth that wasn't one of the 144,000 or one of their converts is affected by this. So, listen up to what kind of a holiday it was. Verse 6. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die because of the judgments of God, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So how did they hurt all those who were not sealed by God? Their sting caused intense pain, but it didn't kill them. They will seek death, but they won't find it. Death takes a 5-month holiday. Now, right now on the planet, we'd love for death to take a 5-month holiday. We're not at this point of a judgment of God right now. We would love for nobody to die on planet Earth for the next 5 months. But these people, remember, they got in the mountains and the hills and said, rocks fall on us, kill us, and hide us from the face of Him who is judging us. They wanted to die. And now these locust-like creatures that are tormenting them are causing such severe pain in their bodies, they want to die. And God said, not for 5 months you're not going to die. You're going to face my anger for 5 months. And so death takes a holiday. That's what I named this lesson. Death takes a holiday. Verse 7. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions, and they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron. And the sounds of their wings was as the sounds of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men for 5 months. So, what are these locust things?
Could be helicopters.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier in another lesson. It's possible they're helicopters. Now remember, John is a 1st century AD man. They didn't have any modern contraption. Zero. Jules Verne wasn't even alive yet. People with imagination to write books about the future hadn't arrived yet. And this man is seeing things that his mind has no way of understanding. So he explains what he sees. And these could be helicopters, jet airplanes. That would say why the face of a man was there and the hair of a woman. You know, in today's world, all pilots aren't men. Some are women. And the stinger in the back could be a gunner in the back of an airplane or a helicopter shooting out the rear end of the flying machine. Who knows? But John explained it the best he could. The bottom line isn't for us to dot every I and cross every T and say emphatically these are helicopters. The best you do is make guesses. The bottom line is a lot of people are dying in these last 3.5 years. A lot of people are dying because of the judgment of God. We haven't got to that part yet, but you know, in that last 3.5 years, angels will be flying through the air in sight of human beings, preaching the gospel, and they'll reject it. The gospel message. You don't have to live eternity like this. Come to Jesus and get saved. And they were so hardened of heart that they rejected. And it's a sad thing. Again, when I read stuff like this, I can't say definitively that not a single person gets saved the last 3.5 years, but that's the conclusion I've drawn. All the converts during the tribulation period will be saved in the first 3.5 years. Again, it's a guess. I don't like people arguing over the book of Revelation. No, it means this, it means this. We're trying to figure out a message given in pictures. Not emphatical words, but pictures. Word pictures. And so to fight over what each of these things represent to me is a bit silly. But don't get me wrong, when I first started studying this, I'd have probably argued with some people over it. But I don't care if they're helicopters or not. All I know is they are judgments going on in the last 3.5 years. And I don't want to be a part of it. I want to be in heaven when all that's going down. All right. So what will these locusts look like? And I repeated some of the language of the verses above. What are they? Some ideas include demons, special creations from God for this occasion, or helicopters. They don't have to be helicopters or jet airplanes. They could just be something God created for this event. We don't know. And but it goes on, again, we can disagree as to what they will literally be, but the main point is that they will cause intense pain upon all who are not sealed by God. They will only harm humans. They won't. The first 4 trumpets harmed the earth. The 5th trumpet is only harming humans. It's not touching the grass or the trees or the rivers. So, verse 11, they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue his name is Apollyon. Now, who is in control of these locust-like creatures? He's the angel from the bottomless pit. And again, that's the one that was given the keys to the bottomless pit. His name is Abaddon, meaning a destroying angel, or Apollyon, meaning a destroyer, according to Strong. I personally believe it's Satan. Again, I don't want to be there to witness it firsthand who it is. Really don't. If these are demonic creatures or special creations for this event, it's easy to see how their king would be Satan. If they were helicopters, then the Antichrist would be their commander, and its commander is Satan. I'm wondering why the Antichrist would order helicopters to torture his followers. And the next note is the Antichrist would want to torture believers, but God has sealed his followers. And so he'll just torture his own people, if indeed it's Satan. Satan controlling the Antichrist. Verse 12, one woe is past, and behold, there come 2 more woes hereafter. Now remember, after the first 4 trumpets in last Tuesday's lesson, it talked about the 3 woes that were yet to come, which would be trumpets 5, 6, and 7. Now this lesson's just been about one, the first woe, when death takes a holiday. So there's 2 more trumpets to go yet. And It appears that everything we've talked about so far is bad, but it appears like it just keeps getting worse. And I'm telling you, when these next two trumpets are done and we get into the vials, they're worse than the trumpets. They're worse than the trumpets.